And today, the peppers, zucchini, and eggplant are even sourced from Windswept Farm, which is where the Reform Cafe is located. There's a few leftover meals, so if you didn't get a chance to grab one, you can go and grab one now. The cards on your table are We and Me cards created by Will Wise. He works with Shavers Creek and World in Conversation to facilitate connection before content. I hope that you were able to get to know some people sitting around you by using these cards. We also have a lexicon art display back there, so if you didn't get a chance to check it out earlier, feel free to at the end. It really displays like the food sustainability and sustainable development within food systems, which is really cool. Today I'm very excited to announce that we have Monica and Duke Gastiger, who are the owners of Reform Cafe, a local farm-to-table restaurant located in State College. They previously owned a few popular restaurants in downtown State College, like the Rotskeller and Spats, but have transitioned in their new and upcoming restaurant. They will be speaking about Reform Cafe, a farm-to-fork journey embracing living systems. Let's give a warm welcome to Monica and Duke Gastiger.
Thank you. It's great to be here, see some familiar faces, and get to know some new people. I'm Monica Gastiger. My husband Duke and I are the co-creators of Reform Cafe. As Maddie mentioned, we've had Spats Cafe in the Rotskeller downtown for many years, and this project has been in the works for several years now, and it's kind of living the dream for us. So my background, I have a degree in landscape architecture and worked as a landscape architect for several years, and then decided to change paths and actually got another degree here at Penn State, and I'm now a speech language pathologist, and I work with the local school district as an assistive technology consultant. So I work across the districts with all ages and all levels of need. And I'm going to let Duke tell you a little bit about himself.
And my family as well, my father, my son, and I were all Penn Staters. I came here as a pre-med major, ended up being a chef. So butchering animals, butchering people, same business, just different income levels. So been a chef through my work in the hotel industry. I was a food and beverage director for Hyatt Hotels for 12 years. I opened up 7 hotels with them and dozens of restaurants. And that's why one of the things that we've noticed from the very beginning of my career is that what a terrible waster of energy and water the restaurant industry is. So that's one of the main motivations. And
So one of the things we want you to know is that this isn't just a cafe. This isn't just a place to go and eat. It's not just to go out and have your lunch and come back. There's a whole lot more that we're looking at with this project. We're looking at a really unique dining experience, someplace where you can see your food grown outside your window, someplace where you know where everything on your plate came from. We're looking at community resources and educational opportunities. We've had hundreds of volunteers already out learning and helping us. Some great educational opportunities, learning about our local food system, learning about building, learning about the environment, learning about people's connectedness, how we all relate. One of our big goals is to build community capacity. And we're doing that looking at food systems, at building methods, and at business models.
we approached our journey with the original thought is that we wanted to build a cafe that would be transformative and, in my estimation, off the grid. I mean, if you remember 5, 7, 10 years ago, off the grid was the big buzzword. We started out with a small cafe that was wood-fired kitchen, solar powered for the rest. And our first shot at design was this massive building. It got away from building green, let's just put it that way. We were introduced to a lot of really smart people in green build industry, and our main design team explained to us what we would teach from this building by being off the grid. We don't teach our community anything by being off the grid. All we're doing are removing ourselves from community responsibility to teach, to share. So we moved away from off the grid to zero energy, zero water, and an introduction into the Living Building Challenge, which we'll talk about in a little bit. So we needed to work within the living system. That's the way to get things accomplished. That's the way to make industry change. The first thing we had to do is realize what our obstacles were. The first obstacle we faced was building a cafe in an agricultural zone. Big, big problem. How dangerous that a farmer would actually want to not only produce great foods, but also prepare and sell those great foods. So even today, if you see a farm market on a farm, and there's several in our community, by law, theoretically, they're not even allowed to sell their own produce on their farm. So the first thing we did was approach Ferguson Township and then Patton Township in convincing them that a cafe on a farm, farm to fork, was just an extension of the food system of the farm. And then through 2.5 years of working with a lot of people in the community, including the Council of Governments, who we had several people working for us off the books on their own time, we developed a farm cafe ordinance. And first Ferguson passed it, and then Patton Township passed it.
So this is our building design that is currently under construction. When we had Spats Cafe, a lot of what we tried to do was source responsibly. You can't source shrimp locally, obviously, but when diners came, we were prepared. If you asked, where did these grits on my plate come from? We could tell you the source. They came from this mill in this part of Pennsylvania. And so you had an idea of how far that food traveled before it was on your plate. It was something we really held to at Spats and the Rathskeller. It was not easy to do, and it was a challenge that we thought we need to take this to the next level. And that's where Refarm Cafe comes in. It gives us a chance to connect people to food, to land, in a much different way with many, many other opportunities.
And talk about connectedness. One of the things from the dawn of man and woman was what brought people together into a community. Food is one of the things that brought people together, the search for it and the preparation of it and the sharing of it. We're not doing anything different 10, 12, 15,000 years later. Today, what binds us together? This nice little meal that you have. It's a great point to be a social lubricant for conversation. So that's community, and that's one of the things that we know, that a farm cafe, where you actually can talk about something other than stuffing food down your mouth, where food comes from and the security of it.
So this is the question we're always asked. Why is it Refarm Cafe? Well, if you think of the first two letters in the words responsible resources, regeneration, the trio, reduce, reuse, recycle, you get the idea. We were searching for what could represent all the things that we're thinking about here. And regeneration is such a strong word for us. And all of those other re-words, it seemed natural. So that's how we got to re.
There is a new organization which you may have heard of. It's called the International Living Futures Institute. I'm sure that most of you have heard or come in contact with LEEDs buildings. Half of Penn State's campus is LEED certified. ILF decided that LEEDs is not enough, and there's a difference between the two. So LEEDs was a pioneer in green building, but that's what it is. It's specifications for building green. It stops the day you open your business. So you don't have to operate in a environmentally friendly manner. International Living Futures decided we need to go one step further. Sustainability leads, do no harm. ILF, Living Building Challenge, regenerative thinking. So we're not only concerned about not doing harm, staying as we are, but we're here to help out as a community of builders and work with the environment. So it is by far, LBC is a certification program that defines the most advanced measure of sustainability. It provides a framework for design, construction, and the relationship between people and all aspects of the built environment. It is one of the most rigorous performance standards in the industry. It requires net zero energy, net zero waste, and net zero water in every project. And then again, LBC certification is only considered after you've been operating for an audit period of 12 months. So you can't hide things. Without a doubt, it achieves this level of performance. You can say that you're the greenest anywhere. There are about 300 and some projects registered worldwide. There have been 23 complete certifications worldwide. We are one of those 300. None of those 300 have been commercial businesses. They've either been nonprofits or apartment complexes or office buildings. We would be the first restaurant, and we'd be the first commercial establishment. We also be the first for-profit business. And that's something that we all have to consider when we talk about questions of, we just can't design green for nonprofits, museums. Lots of opportunity to teach, but you got to bring it into practice into a for-profit environment.
So one of the greatest metaphors that helps people understand the Living Building Challenge is the metaphor of the flower. So you're building, what you're building, what you're doing needs to provide the same beauty as, think of the flower growing in the field. It provides beauty just on its own. It uses an amount of water and an amount of sunshine, and what it requires, it gets in the built environment. It's a living system. This building needs to be a living system as well. It's not just about the construction. It's not just about when it's operating and open. It's about the people that use this building, not just now constructing it, the people that use it, that come in as a customer, as a diner, the people that work there, the people in the future. It all has to work together. We got to change our thinking and get a new conversation going, thinking about how do we all operate within a living system, not just have a goal, get it done, and move on. This is an ongoing thing. So the Living Building Challenge has 7 petals, and these are the 7 petals that you work towards achieve. We're to work towards to achieve. We're going to go through all of these pretty quickly, just so you have a base knowledge of what we're talking about with the Living Building Challenge. So the first one.
The water petal, which for a restaurant is a crazy thing to tackle. What the LBC requires of you is to, whatever water is on your land stays on your land. You can't be tied to city services. You have to harvest and use all stormwater. One of the largest challenge for any project, certainly for the restaurant business, is what LBC challenges you is redefine what waste is. That, and I was surprised at Spats. We thought that we were pretty good economizers of waste, and until we got into a composting program, experimental with the borough, and they audited our waste, and we were averaging over 2,200 pounds of waste a month. It was crazy. So being tied in with a farm, you get to use that waste for composting to feed a lot of your animals. So we will have very limited waste in the farm cafe. The site petal, really articulates of where you're able to build. The Living Building Challenge, unfortunately, or a challenge for us, was designed about urban landscape, of how to utilize urban sites. When we came to them and say we want to certify a farm in an agricultural zone, they said, well, we don't have any rules for you. So we're actually helping them write the rule for rural development. The one thing that does affect us is habitat exchange. So we, as a LBC project, if we're disturbing 2 acres of land for our site, we have to put 2 acres of land in conservation at some other project, not on our site, but somewhere else that we choose. Again, it's not only do no harm, it's just that make it better.
The most challenging pedal of the Living Building Challenge is the materials pedal. The materials pedal says that, see this list of things up here? None of those things can be in anything you use for the building. PVC's up there, formaldehyde. Some of them obviously lead, we get. But try to build a building without PVC. It's been a challenge. And this is the biggest challenge pedal of the Living Building Challenge. All of your materials have to be vetted. So any material that you want to use that is not already on a list that has been vetted, you must write to manufacturers and say, will you produce this item without that little PVC ring on the whole unit? And we have to prove that we have done that kind of consumer advocacy. And the point of that being, you know what, at some point somebody's going to listen and say, you know what, there are a lot of people out there that don't want to be using this, and they want it in a different way, and we create this consumer demand, and maybe we make a change in how the system thinks about building and what we're doing. And it may cost a little bit more now, but in the long run, what's our trade-off going to be? Another pedal is the health pedal. And this one, it talks about a highly productive indoor environment. And so operable windows and fresh air are important to the health, to your health. This is like one of the views when you walk through from the waiting room in the cafe into the cafe. I don't know, I think it's pretty healthy to take in that view.
The other pedal is the equity pedal. Okay. And it's focusing on communities with equitable access to all people. One of the challenges that we had when we had our first discussions with the LBC team was to say, well, what happens if somebody walks in your restaurant and wants to eat and they don't have any money? We have to start thinking about those things. You can't exclude people because they are unavailable to take advantage of what you're offering. So one of the things that we decided to do is to go price fix, one charge for your meal, and sell tickets rather than take reservations and order off the menu sort of deal. And then just like when you go to a theater, you buy 4 tickets. If somebody's able to go, you don't go back and say, well, give me the money back for the ticket. You know, you either find somebody to take that ticket or you eat it. Excuse the pun. So what we're doing is saying, okay, you don't show up with that one person. That food still had to be prepared. We still had to bring in staff. We still have a profit margin that we have to keep for the restaurant. So we're going to take that money, but we're going to pay our expenses, and everything that's left over is going to in a fund that we can use to offer tickets to community foundations, Women's Resource Center. We did that at the Spats, and the point being is that people aren't identified as being needy people. They're just given a ticket, go in just like any other customer. Pride is a very important thing that we certainly have learned to come to understand. One of the things that I want to talk about too is is, as far as the equity pedal, one of my original thoughts was about supporting small farmers, local small farmers. And one of the things that struck me like a ton of bricks was the median family income in Center County is about $58,000 a year. The median small family farm income is about $29,000 a year. So we're talking about equity. We have to find a way to make small farms not only profitable, but something that is desirable for young people to want to get into that industry.
Another pedal is the beauty pedal. And this one really just talks about making your building beautiful. I mean, that's a fun one. And the last pedal that Duke's going to tell you about is the energy pedal.
I used to design and build hotel restaurants. When we had thoughts about what kind of restaurant we'd want, we'd get the best equipment in the world for much more than we really needed and put it in the kitchen and then hand it to the engineers to design that kitchen based on our needs. When we first worked with some of our new energy consultants, they looked at me and said, well, we don't work that way in the energy world. He said, we tell you how much energy you could have. And then you can design your kitchen based around that energy use. We're not going to tell you what to put in, but if we say that you only can have, my number was 22 kilowatt hours per year. That's what you have. We're creating all that energy. If you go over that, you're going to take it from some other part of the building. So that was quite a challenge. But we've done the research. We've done all the tests. We know that we can supply all our energy needs with solar panels at the Reform Cafe. They'll all be mounted on one of our barns and also the cafe building itself. But in order to be able to use no more energy than we needed to, we had to make a lot of procedural changes. First of all, we got away from normal cooking, which under the LBC rules, you can have electric, but you can't have gas. So electric equipment in a kitchen is a no-no as a chef. Those of you who have electric at home, you don't like to work with electric. But what I was able to do was start to think about induction cooking. And if you have an induction little hot plate in your home, or fortunate enough to have an induction stove, it is a great piece of equipment. So it works on a magnetic principle. It's still fired by electricity, but basically a small electrical charge excites magnets to rotate, and that magnet will cause an ion exchange with some sort of ferrous pot, has to be ferrous. And then the pot heats up and then heats up whatever's in the pot. So rather than like a traditional stove where you heat up an area, think about your gas stove. You're heating up the area, yeah, you direct heat the pot, but you're also heating up the living space. So what this allows to do is be about 85% more efficient than conventional cooking, because we're not heating up the air. You heat up the air, you have to cool it. So induction cooking is a big part of what we're doing.
This is our greenhouse that we put out on the farm, and just to show you, even though it's not part of Reform Cafe and the Living Building Challenge project, on the farm we're holding to the same principles as we can with repurposing items and reusing things. These greenhouses we found out of town a ways. They had been not in use for many years. We bought them from that person, took them apart, brought them to our property, and then reconfigured them in this new way, and they are run on solar now. One of the words that comes back to us over and over as we start evaluating what we're doing, thinking about what we're going to do next, is connectedness. We've had a lot of hurdles that we've had to manage, and some of them have been big hurdles. We lost our first site where we were going to be building the cafe. We were ready to break ground, and the farmer that we were going to lease the land from said, no, you know what? I don't want this here. That was a big hurdle. But what we learned was there's a community out there of support, of people who say, this is a good idea, this is something we want. And with the help of a lot of good ideas, we found a farm. And then we had never expected to be farmers. And here we are. We bought a farm. But I don't think we would have thought outside that box and changed our thinking about what was possible without that hurdle. And this whole building project, we've had hurdles upon hurdles that we're learning about and learning to change our thinking and think about how we're thinking about new things.
We aren't looking just to maintain what we have. So we're looking for changes. You know, change is good. Regeneration is all about change. And this is old Bob Dylan. There's nothing so stable as change. That's what regeneration is. Regeneration is looking at the same problem and finding different solutions, not accepting. And I will say that part of that process too about stable as change is we've gone through that process of realization of and acceptance of problems. Acceptance means that it's our problem, it's just not somebody else's. We've done research and development. We continue to do that. Just last week, we had a real stumbling block where after design of all our HVAC systems, our engineers came back and said, well, what we designed for the kitchen hood won't work. Consider the energy requirements that we have. So we had to go back and find other companies with different ideas to totally redesign our kitchen exhaust system right in the middle of the building. But that's part of what you have to do. And the last part of that after the research and development is the action part. So we're presently more in that action part than we are in anything else. But yeah. Regenerative is what we have to convince our industries, whether you're in the restaurant industry or other industries, that we've got to move past sustainability. In fact, we have that challenge of even using the word sustainability in what we do. You can't just be sustainable. It's a catchphrase, and it automatically ties people together, I think. But what regenerative thinking does is being able to take the next step. And so it's not only equipment and materials and fancy slogans as much as the opportunity to get together as a community and group think problems. Yep. We've always considered ourselves as sort of pioneers. There's lots of trade-offs in what we do that we could have become a nonprofit in the very beginning. But again, in teaching our community, being a nonprofit, although laudable, doesn't teach really the business community anything. So we're trying regenerative restaurant industry change. We're attacking our industry. We're going to show them that it can be done. Luckily, we have a bunch of partners with us that also see our same vision, and they're willing to make that personal sacrifice in time and money in order to be that pioneering effort.
So one of the questions we were posed was, what can each of us do to be part of this talk? So I'll give you an example, and then I'm going to ask you at your tables with your groups to think about this question. So that meal you order from Grubhub, I want you to think about the salad that you order from Grubhub. Where was that salad grown? How far across the country was it trucked here? What fossil fuels were used to bring it here? What refrigeration was used to keep it fresh? as it came across the country or across the state. When it got to your source of the place preparing your food, how much refrigeration did they use? How many people labored over that? How much more water was used to wash your salad? And then your Grubhub driver. What gas did your Grubhub driver use to get to the restaurant, pick up your item, get to your apartment, bring it to you, and then ask yourself, who all was paid a living wage along the way? There's a lot involved in that salad delivered by Grubhub. Now, compare it to, there's a farmer's market going on down the street. Jeannie's here from it. We have a stand up there, but that's not why I'm telling you this. So what happens, how much energy and what happens for you to walk up to that farmer's market, go along and buy your fruit and buy your bread and buy your vegetables from people that are local. And yes, it's going to cost you a little more because food does actually cost a lot to produce on a small farm, and take it home and wash it. Think about those few extra dollars you spent, where that wasn't creating an impact, where you're using using a lot of fossil fuels, being trucked across the country, a lot of extra refrigeration. I just want you to take that image every time you go to think to order Grubhub, what the difference is. So that was one example, but what I'd like you all to do is turn within your groups and see if you can come up with another example and then share it with us. I should time this. So I know that's not a lot of time. And so if you can hear me and look up here and stop talking. Or I can be loud. I can be really loud. I'm so glad everyone's engaged in conversation. Thank you. So could each group just summarize quickly, one person from each group, just tell us a little bit about what you talked about, and let's keep this short. What we're doing is sparking ideas for further conversation. So does anybody want to share something? And I'll try and repeat it since we only have one mic. Anybody have some good ideas? What should we be talking about? Do you want to talk?
See if I can summarize this. So the story I shared with my table is that, this was years ago. So there are a lot of common areas in our residential areas that plant trees for shade and various other reasons, but some of those plants, shrubs, trees are edible. And there was a neighborhood that was 2 blocks from my house, was producing berries. I happened to know that they were edible. And since it was in a cul-de-sac, it looked community oriented, I asked the neighbor that was coming out of their house to put their garbage out, do you mind if I have a few of these berries? And I had my 7-year-old with me. And essentially this person got all upset with me, said it was only for the birds and it wasn't for me to eat. And I'm like, that's okay. So I stepped away, went home with my child, and I came back the next day and I said, I just want you to think about something. You know, you probably get your strawberries and your blueberries for your cereal from the grocery store. Did you ever think about the box that those berries came in? The fact that it was plastic, was produced maybe in Texas, I said as an example. And then that had to be shipped to California so that some low-level person that didn't get paid very much to pick those strawberries, put that in a plastic container and ship it to Pennsylvania so that you could drive to the grocery store and get those berries for your cereal when you could walk 25 steps and get berries for your cereal. And I don't think he said anything, and I went home, but I think it's important for us to just say, you know, think about this. Just think about it. And it's up to them whether, you know, their next steps.
Absolutely, thank you. That's exactly what we're talking about here, being a pioneer. It isn't always easy to be a pioneer, to enact some change. Anybody else? Things for us to think home and take?
Yeah, and if you have some thoughts, we do follow up with a question and answer period, so that if you had some thoughts, you can do that. Just 2 things. I've been cooking for 45 years as a chef, and just because we had a farm and because our farm manager said, hey, do you want to work with nettles? And I've come up with some great recipes for nettles. So there's lots of things out there. When we were in Asheville, North Carolina, they have taken over the medians in between the streets and are planting community gardens in the streets and inviting people to come up and partake of whatever that grows in the medians, rather than just mowing grass, which of course saves on fuel. So there's lots of kind of innovative ideas, but some of them work, some of them don't, but we just got to try.
So we have one more idea for you. This came up at another meeting locally. When you go out to a restaurant, ask your server, what's local? What's local on my plate? And again, creating this consumer demand. The more somebody hears, oh, you know what, our customers want something that was produced locally, that's important to them, we start to create, again, that consumer demand, that people are paying attention to what's important to you. So we started a hashtag, what's local. You're welcome to please jump on the bandwagon and take the question with you out to dinner, what's local? So I'm just going to read to you. Healthy forward-thinking development practices, including energy sourcing and water quality, aren't just buzzwords for today. These regenerative practices are really essential to our future. So ever since Duke and I have been doing these presentations to community groups, to all kinds of groups, including when we went to the township and said, we'd really like to have a farm cafe. And they said, you can't do that here. We concluded every presentation with this quote, and it still holds true today. It's by Joel Barker. Vision without action is merely a dream. Action without vision is just passing time. And vision with action can change the world. So thank you for being here, and we'd love to hear your questions and try and answer them. Mm-hmm.
I would love to see more farm to table being Airbnbs, where people have their Airbnb, but then they also grow for that establishment. So I would like to see something like that.
Great, thank you. She was talking about Airbnbs being more farm to table, having more opportunities about an experience on a farm in an Airbnb. Thank you.
Number one industry in Pennsylvania, agriculture. Number two industry in Pennsylvania, tourism. And combining those two are a challenge, but just as much as we work with the local government in getting a farm cafe ordinance, a lot of tourism businesses are working with Pennsylvania and regional governments to try to make agritourism a lot more friendly. So it's a good point. Yes? Where is the location? So we're about a mile and actually two and a half miles from here, right near the airport. As you go into the airport, you run across Fillmore Road, right at the intersection where the Fullington bus terminal is. Turn left, mile down on the left. It was very important for us to find a location. In fact, it was almost a year search to find it, that students had access to. We did not want to be more than 15 miles away from Penn State and the local community. So it's a great location, 57 acres, rolling hills, lots of challenges. Right now we have sheep and pigs and chickens and ducks and guinea hens. Actually, some days we have 5 and the other days we have 12. I'm not exactly sure where they all go. But we'll probably do rabbits for meat. We don't do beef because beef cows, unless you're set up for it to do a lot of damage to your pasture land. Plus, part of our challenge and our mission is to work with other local small farms. Lots of beef available in Centre County, really good pasture-raised beef. So we'll grow about 80% of the produce that we'll need for the farm cafe. We are at the farmers markets. We're on Friends and Farmers, but we will support local farms.
How much of the property will be put in asphalt for the parking area of the restaurant? I know the Naked Egg, for example, doesn't have enough parking. And but on the other hand, if you're thinking of actually the drainage and other things that are involved with having the cars there, I would think that would be an issue.
It's always an issue, especially when you're dealing with living building challenge. So we have a percentage that we're allowed for impervious pavement, which is very small. I'm sorry?
Could you use gravel instead?
Almost all our parking is gravel based. The only time that we really use concrete is because of handicap access, because you can't have gravel for handicap access. So that was a challenge. We are limited in parking. Remember, we talked about the LBC was really set up for urban renewal. So they have, what they are promoting in their urban renewal plans is reducing dependency on automobiles, and they want bike traffic and walking. We've done the same thing, and to a certain extent, that we actually back up to Burnell Park. Burnell Park will have pathways from top trees. The bus routes will actually come to that Burnell area with the new construction there. So we are going to be honest with our customers that they need to carpool. We have a limited number of spaces. Monica's worked out a great deal when we do have larger events with Fullington Bus Terminal, that Fullington is going to have their parking available for larger groups and then shuttle people back and forth, because we're only 3/4 of a mile away. So good point.
Something I've always wondered about with grocery stores, the produce that starts to get moldy or has to be disposed of. And then you have pigs. Do you feed your leftover unsold produce to your pigs?
So we can't feed something that's moldy to a pig. We wouldn't feed them anything. We wouldn't feed you or ourselves. but that goes in compost, and then that turns around and becomes great soil. But no, so if we have leftover vegetables that we feel that we're not going to be able to use, because we did plant as if we would still have a fully operational restaurant downtown. So we do have a lot of produce right now. So yes, some of that goes to feed the pigs. Some of it we donate to different places too.
Just to add to that, so seconds, or there's prime produce and then there's seconds. The problem is with most grocery stores is that they discard their seconds. Seconds to us, as a chef, sauces. We just sold a bunch of tomato seconds the other day for somebody who wanted to make sauce. Apples is a good example. If you're going to make cider, you don't care if your apples are pretty or not, as long as they don't have the mold on it that you talked about. So it's that regenerative thinking again, not just answers to surface problems. You got to dig a little bit deeper. Yes?
How do you see like your educational programs being, I guess, run? Like, do you see like local the high schools coming in with classes, or Penn State?
So one of the things Duke is super excited about is this cooking school. So having guest chefs in for the day, the cafe itself has an open teaching kitchen smack dab in the middle of the cafe. So when you're seated in the cafe, you're going to have a cooking lesson if you want one. You can communicate directly with your chef. So the dining experience can be educational in that you can walk through the fields, you can see what's growing there. You might want to say, oh, I've never tried that vegetable, pick it. Your chef will put it in your meal and you can try it if it's ready to be picked. Guest chefs coming in, so that's one aspect of it. There are so many possible educational pieces being out on a farm, being out. We see we've had a lot of groups have interest in having retreats out there, business meetings. So you can have your business meeting and have something indoors, but then those breakout groups into someplace awesomely beautiful. I have yet to have somebody come out and say, oh, this was no good. Everybody comes out and says, wow, what an incredible experience. I can already feel like that sense of peace has come over me. So I think we're going to see people using it for retreats, for business meetings. There are lots of other educational pieces. This summer, Jeannie set up something. There were kids at the park, and we came out and we did seed balls. So something as simple as that, teaching a child about here's what a little bit of compost and seeds, and go and put it in your yard and watch what grows. So it can be something that's just incidental that we do then, and it can be classes, it could be school groups, it could be. We've had plenty of Penn State students come out and do a lot of volunteering. We've had a couple of classes at Penn State use Refarm Cafe as a project, and what's really cool about that is it's a real life project. It's actually going to be built, and you can look at where you thought about things and how they're actually being implemented. So thanks.
And that effort from Penn State is cross-discipline as well. So we've had architectural engineering students out there. We've had architecture students. We've had nutrition students. We've already had a half dozen environmental engineering. We've had a half dozen interns already from Penn State. So we're not afraid. We're not afraid of this 500-pound gorilla. We're all very much intending to use Penn State as a resource, as we expect Penn State to use us as a resource. So we love the relationship with Penn State. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys so much for coming out. That was a great talk. As we wrap up, you can put all of your meals in the compost bin. Even like salad dressing, everything is compostable. On your way out, there's like the Lexicon show right there. So you can take a peek at that. There's some like really cool images about food sustainability. And then next week we will have Karen Winter to talk about like sustainable and disposable materials. And she's a professor of marketing here at Penn State. So I definitely think that you should come check it out. Thank you guys so much. Have a good weekend.